thanks for joining me again. We have a really great selection of silicone molds at Sweetwise, and some of my favorites are the pearl and rope border molds. You can certainly use them for other things like a pearl bracelet, for instance, or a rope itself, but I want to show you how to use these. They all work the same way, so whatever you're choosing, if it's a braided mold for, say, a Western cake, or a pearl mold for like a Victorian type cake, they all work the same way. It is really important to use a gum paste. So here I have a little bit of fondant, and I'm going to show you how it stretches a little bit when you put it in the mold. So over here, this white piece that I have is actually a gum paste, so it's fondant with a little bit of Tylose powder in it. So remember to add that. If you find that these are not coming out of the mold very well, then they're probably just a little bit too stretchy and gummy, and you need to use gum paste instead of fondant. So I'm just going to roll this out into a snake. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be able to fill the mold. And I'm just going to kind of wiggle it in. You can see I'm kind of separating the mold a little bit with my fingers. I want to make sure I get it way down deep in that cavity so that it takes all of that nice detail that's in there. This is one of our beaded rope borders. I really love it. So I've pushed that in there really well. And again, working with the fondant here that's in the yellow, I'm just going to use a little rolling pin. You can see how well these stretch. So this is really forcing it down to get every nice little detail. Now I want to cut off this excess to clean it up a little bit, so I'm going to use my fondant knife. I don't want to use a sharp knife because it can cut through this mold, and then that will take up some of the fondant that you push in there in the future. So you definitely want to use something that's not going to cut the mold, and this one is really nice and stick proof. I've used some other plastic type knives that the fondant sticks to, so this one really rolls off it nicely. So now that I've got that cleaned up, I'm just going to go back with my fingers and clean that up a little bit. Now I'm going to show you as this comes out. Again, the yellow fondant that I'm working with is fondant. These should pop right out. The fondant's a little bit gummier and stickier. So I want to turn it over and roll this out. And because it doesn't release as nicely, it stretches out a little bit. And then by the time it's come out, it's just elongated a little bit. So this is the original mold and how much it's stretched coming out. Now I'm going to use a little bit of the gum paste in it and show you the nice difference. So again, this Tylose has been sitting inside this fondant for about 15 minutes, so it's nice and set up. You want to make sure that's kept airtight. If you're using some from yesterday, just make sure it's wrapped real tight and kept well out of the air. Just rolling this out into a nice snake. And again, same method. I'm just going to push this down into the mold, wiggling it down in there. And then I'm going to take my rolling pin and really force it down in there nicely. Really picking up all that nice detail. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the fondant knife and just come back, cut off that excess. See how I can cut right over the surface of that and it doesn't bother cutting my mold? Really take good care of these molds. So just cutting off the excess, and then again clean it up with my fingers a bit, and then make sure you're not pulling it out from the mold. You want to turn it over, let it release. Yeah, I can feel this is a lot firmer. So I'm just peeling the mold back off of the Tylose infused fondant, so now it's gum paste. And you can see, I'll put these right side by side, that these beads are just a little bit more elongated. So if you're doing something like the pearl mold, like this one here, you really want these to stay nice and round and in shape. And if it's elongated, then it's not really getting that same effect and it distorts it a little bit. But all of these molds work the same way. If it's a braided rope or a bead mold or whatever it is, all work the same way. Just a little bit of gum paste in there, clean it up, and you can put it on any cake as a border. They work really great. Hope you enjoy them.